And the winner is Bob Fosse for Cabaret.
It was 1973 when Bob Fosse won his only Oscar for Cabaret and its depiction of life and romance in a Germany being taken over by the Nazis.
Life is a cabaret, old chum.
Bob Fosse is the creative genius behind many major musical hits like Chicago and Sweet Charity, and he is the man who choreographed his own sense of what dying would be like in the award-winning movie All That Jazz in 1980, 6 years before his own death from a heart attack in 1986. Fosse was a complex man of the theater who didn't give many interviews. Back in the 80s, though, Fosse did consent to talk with me about the nature of his genius and his chain-smoking workaholic lifestyle. Has it been worth it for you in your own...
Wow, that's a tough question. I certainly have received a lot of benefit from it. I like my life. I think that I would be better off if I could get away from work sometimes and not let it eat at me and not be so obsessed with it. But it doesn't happen. I'm sorry, I need it one more time, please. Same thing.
When you saw that this driven kind of life was driving you almost to the point of physical extinction, though, did that freak you out at all and make you kind of reevaluate?
I don't know. I think a lot of us have this sense of immortality. It's not going to happen to us, you know. It's going to happen to the guy in the next bed or the guy on the other side, but it's not going to happen to you. Is it any good when they start the second part?
Parts of it.
Yeah. You know, like Chaplin said, all of us are amateurs. None of us live long enough to be anything else but. Every time I start on something new, it's like day one. How do we do this? I mean, and in dancing, it should be easy. You got a left foot and a right foot. You say, well, you got to step off on one of those. The decision shouldn't be that hard to make.
Yeah, it's one or the other. Right?
Yeah. So I roll the dice and I say, right foot, here we go.
We got magic to do, just for you.
Do you have any real regrets about any of it, the life of obsession and compulsion?
I've learned to live with it, you know. At my age, you can't alter your behavior that much, I don't think. I mean, I try, but I don't think I can. So the best thing is to say, well, this is what I have, and this is the kind of person I am, so I guess I'll live the rest of my life that way.
And he did continue living that way. Even heart attacks, hospitals, and doctors' warnings couldn't stop Bob Fosse from pursuing the perfection of whatever creative vision he was possessed by.
Should we try the whole shot?
That pursuit of perfection brought Bob Fosse many awards over the years, but he was most touched when All That Jazz won the Cannes Film Festival Grand Prize, as presented by Dirk Bogarde and Kirk Douglas.
The Palme d'Or executor, Bob Fosse's All That Jazz.
So All That Jazz has made it to the French Riviera, and it really is surprising for me to learn that this is actually your first trip to the Cannes Film Festival.
It wasn't my first trip, though, and Fosse made a few jokes about how naive and gullible he thought I was to be so thrilled about visiting the French Riviera.
You know, I've been covering this circus called the Cannes Film Festival for 5 years now, and I have to tell you that every year, just the idea of being able to come here to this part of the world and get paid for it always reminds me of how magical the words French Riviera and the south of France sounded to me the very first time I ever heard them a few years ago when I was about 17 years old and living in a place called Columbus, Ohio. I mean, the glamorous and truly exotic images that I could conjure just by hearing those words were really incredible. And I must say that this part of the world still lives up to all of those boyhood images. The funny thing is, most of the people who come to the Cannes Film Festival never get a chance to see what this part of the world is really like, because the Cannes Film Festival is definitely not what the south of France is really like by any means.
Bob Fosse ran the Cannes Film Festival gauntlet of press events to keep the attention on All That Jazz, the film he called My Baby, maybe because it was purely autobiographical, a dissection of himself, with Roy Scheider playing the Fosse choreographer character Joe Gideon as he faced death.
I feel like I could die. Bye-bye your life goodbye. Bye-bye my life goodbye.
20 minutes of dance dedicated to Joe Gideon's death. If I were to choreograph my own, I think it would be longer.
It's showtime, folks.
Ultimately, Bob Fosse was the one who was thrilled about being in Cannes when All That Jazz not only won the festival's top prize, but the movie screening ended with a very rare standing ovation.
My entire life, I don't think I've ever been around a response like that at the end of the film. It was, you know, it makes all this stuff that you go through in show business and trying so desperately to get something on and you believe in it. It makes it all worthwhile suddenly. In 2 minutes, it's something, well, I'm glad I did it.
One show that Fosse was more than glad he did is Pippin. In fact, he once told me that of all the things he's done, Pippin was nearest and dearest to his heart. Which is why he said yes to the idea of having me produce and direct the cameras on a video of his restaging of the 5 Tony Award-winning breakthrough Broadway musical, starring Ben Vereen and William Catt as Pippin. For Fosse, it was a way to immortalize his favorite, knowing that Pippin was just too theatrical to ever be a movie. So he and I teamed up to make what we didn't realize at the time was the very first Broadway musical in history to ever be captured by cameras during live performance.